Hello, welcome to Healing with Krista. We are on episode 4, Paranormal Activity or Ghost Encounters. So this week podcast, we are going to be going lighter with the topic, just because last week talking about my brother was a lot, and the week before that was a lot too. And so I kind of want to create some balance here and talk about some paranormal stories just because that's fun for me. But some of the stories that I wanted to share with you were taking place in my early childhood, and that's where most of my experiences and everything came from. So, one of the first memories that I can remember was we used to be out to my grandma's house, my grandma Candy and grandpa Bruce. They used to live south of Macy out in the country road. And I was the oldest of the grandkids, and whenever all the grandkids were all together, normally we would be playing outside or we would be playing in the basement. And that's where this story is taking place, is south of Macy at my grandparents' house, playing in the basement. And it was just a typical day, you know, it was pretty early. We're all playing downstairs. And I remember seeing in the corner of the basement, and it was that area where the light wasn't reaching over there. It was pretty dark. It was like the cold area of the basement. It was just one of those areas where it kind of just gave you chills, like where you had a feeling like something was over there. But I looked over and I seen this tall figure standing about 6 foot, had a hat on, and you could tell he had like a long jacket on, and it was just a shadow. His name is the Hat Man. And I, of course, didn't know if there was a name for it, but yeah, it was the Hat Man. He was standing in the corner of the basement while we were all playing. And I remember going up to it and putting my hand on the wall over his shadow. And it was still there. I wasn't terrified or I wasn't scared. I was more of being curious at this point. And I remember just, leaving it alone and just continue playing. And then I remember coming back to that spot. And this time, when I put my hand on the wall, it moved. Not a lot, maybe a few inches. And it was enough for me to realize that it did move. And that's when, I got scared. I pretty much gathered all the grandkids, all my grandma's grandkids up and said, "Hey, let's go outside. Let's go play outside." And they did, they all start going upstairs. And I remember pushing them, like, hurry, go, go, go. And they did. They were rushing. And they didn't ask me why. They just, kind of just listened and went outside. So we went outside to go play. And I came into the house and I seen my grandpa Bruce sitting in front of the TV. And I told him, I was like, Grandpa, I said, there's a man downstairs. And I remember he followed me downstairs and I took him to that corner where it was, and it was gone. And I remember thinking to myself, like, am I imagining this? Or, just questioning myself. But I know it was real. That moment was real to me. It wasn't my imagination. But I remember him looking, and I remember I was like, it was right here. I put my hand on this wall. And he believed me, because he told me he heard a few other things. And I remember just leaving it at that. But now that I'm older, I did some research and I was looking up the Hat Man on YouTube and TikTok. And there's so many people that experience the same thing that I witnessed that day. And I only experienced it once in my life. But one of the stories that caught my attention was this girl. She shared her story about when she was, a child. And she was saying that her parents passed away. So she had to get her belongings and her items together. And she moved with her grandmother. And when she moved with her grandmother, um, she woke up in the middle of the night and she seen this shadow standing at the end of her bed. And that shadow had a hat on and a long coat. She was terrified and she covered up and stayed as still as possible. And then she ended up falling to sleep. And that next morning, she woke up. She told her grandmother about it, that there was this hat man shadow that was standing at the end of her bed. And her grandma believed her. And she told her that the hat man is there to protect her. He only comes around people that are going through traumatizing things in their life, and he's there to protect her. He's a protector. So I like to believe that story and her theory of that because no one else seen the hat man that day. I was the only person. And now that I think of it, during that time, we were going through some hardships there with, my mom and my dad. A lot of traumatizing things happening during that time. So I believe her theory of the grandmother saying, he's a protector. He helps the vulnerable and the people that don't have protection. I really like that. But on the other side, all these other people on TikTok and YouTube, they're saying that you should be scared because it's like a omen or, some Satan, whatever shit. And no, I wasn't scared to that point, like where I was terrified or had nightmares or anything like that. It was not that deep. I wasn't afraid. I got scared because it like moved a few inches, but it didn't cause any harm or anything in that matter. So I just thought I would share that story just because, it was my reality during that time. And I'm glad that I wasn't the only person that seen that. And there's a lot of people out there that share their story about the Hat Man as well. So it feels good to know that I didn't experience that alone. This story is taking place West Projects of Macy. And I know I shared before that we moved to Macy and we shared one bedroom. So in this one bedroom, I woke up probably 2, 3 a.m. and I seen my little brother CJ, and he's a toddler. He had like a glass of water, and then he had another glass of water. And he was sitting down and he was drinking his water, and then he was talking to somebody in the hallway. And I remember getting up, grabbing those two glasses of water, putting them in the kitchen, and grabbing my brother. And bringing him back in the room, making him lay down. But I just got that feeling that he was talking to a ghost because he was baby talking. There was somebody there. What kid goes and gets glasses of water and sits it down in the middle of the hallway? And I remember like telling my brother when he got older, like, do you remember anything from that day? And he doesn't, which um honestly I wouldn't be able to remember at that age. But that was just a little freaky for me because during that time too was my grandmother, Angeline. She passed away. And one thing about my grandma is she was constantly drinking water. She would always talk to me in Omaha. I would go in her room. Her room was right across from our room. And so I used to always go in her room. She would always talk Omaha to me. And I remember she would always tell me to get her water. And there would be times where I would shake my head yes, like not understanding what she meant. And she would ask me, "Do you know what I said?" I said, "Yeah, Grandma, I know what you said." And she was like, "You didn't even." She said, "I told you go get me some water." And I remember I would like run out of the room and I would run into the kitchen and I'll go grab her a glass of water and run it back to her room. But that day when I seen my brother with the two glasses of water, it really reminded me of my grandma that day because she would always send me to the kitchen or we would be sitting in the kitchen table and she would be drinking water. And she used to have these real nice glasses, or thick glasses, and we would just be sitting at the table just drinking water, talking. And that day when I seen my brother do that morning, I got really freaked out, but I also like later on was telling my mom that I think it was grandma that was visiting my brother and I think she was thirsty, so that's why he went to the kitchen and got her a glass of water. That's what I like to believe. Um, but that's one of the stories that took place in West Projects in Macy. I remember living at West Projects, and I remember we were all playing in the basement with some friends, and I just remember getting scared. I don't know, I don't even remember like what time it was. Was it like late at night when we heard footsteps coming down the hallway? It sounded like Grandma, and Grandma recently passed.
Yeah.
And Grandma used to walk down the hallway in her walker.
Mhm.
And whenever she would walk in that walker, she would, sometimes like drag her feet.
Mhm.
And so Grandma passed, and we were downstairs playing with our friends. And then just out of nowhere, we heard that walker coming down the hallway
Mhm.
and how she normally would walk.
But
Yeah.
it was like scarier because it sounded like a lot louder
Yeah.
and like she was dragging her feet
Mm-hmm.
and that's all we heard.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, "Do you guys hear that?" And it was weird because nobody was upstairs.
Mm-mm.
There was nobody up there. And we heard that clearly and we went to go check upstairs and there was nothing up there. There was nobody up there and that was just
Well, I
that's when
remember getting scared. I remember like
we all like looked at each other like,
you go
what the
first, you check
heck?
it out.
Yeah. And all of us just looked at each other because there was nobody home.
Mm-hmm.
And so we all just like all ran outside and everybody they got scared, didn't want to go back inside.
Mm-hmm. Well, do you remember when it was just me and you, I believe, and mom and grandpa and all went to the city and we were home by ourselves and it was getting like pretty dark out. It was late in the evening,
Mhm.
and we were sitting in the living room. And while we were sitting in the living room, that kitchen light was flickering.
Yeah.
Remember, like you could hear that loud flicker, and
Yeah.
it turned on, or no, it turned off, and then it turned back on.
Mhm.
And then we both just looked at each other, and then and I know we went outside, and then as soon as we got outside, then Grandpa and them come pulling up, and they had like groceries.
Yeah.
And then Mom was like asking us like what we were doing outside, and we
Mhm.
were telling her that the light flickered or switched or whatever in there. But yeah, I thought that was pretty creepy, and I especially remember when Grandpa found because Grandpa used to always like take videos of everything, take pictures of every single thing like growing up, and then remember he was looking at his photos. In
Mhm.
one of those photos, there was like a looked like a little boy like with his legs curled up like in the corner
Yeah.
in the living room.
Mhm.
And then we were all looking at it and we didn't recognize who that was.
Yeah. I remember Grandpa used to always take pictures in that house, and then always in the background there used to be like some kind of like like flare
Mhm.
of something, like always in all the pictures.
Mhm.
There's always like a flare or something in the background.
Yeah.
So I believe that house is scary.
I know, but it's like why are all the houses that we grew up in, why were they always like haunted? Or why did we always get that real ugly feeling that, we were unwanted there?
Like when we were younger, just everything just felt spooky.
Mhm.
I felt like everywhere we stayed just felt like it was something that was happening.
Mhm. I don't know, my theory is like the reason why we probably encountered so many spirits is because of the people that we were around.
Yeah.
Like especially, mom and dad, they were both in their active addiction. And so when they went drinking, they went out.
Mhm.
They went out to people's houses, they went to the bars, and then finally whenever they wanted to come home, and sober up, then I just feel like those spirits were still hanging
Yeah.
around them and they were bringing it home with them.
Mhm.
And it's unfortunate that we had to like witness all of that.
Yeah. Oh, I remember like one where I was younger. I don't even know how old I was. Maybe I was probably like 5. Sure. I
Hmm.
don't know how I
God
remember it, but
dang, good memory.
I know this is time like where mom and dad. I remember dad, he escaped from jail, from
Hmm.
AC jail, because I remember mom telling him like we're gonna move to St. Cloud,
Hmm.
and then he didn't want to get left. So I remember he escaped that night.
Yeah.
That night we were about to move to St. Cloud. But anyways, I remember we just got there, and I remember mom and them, they like went to the living room or whatever, went to go clean up or whatever. And I remember being young, and I remember mom she laid me down on the bed or whatever, and they closed the door. And then I remember like there wasn't no curtain on the window,
Hmm.
and I remember I went to go like turn that light on, and I remember like looking at that window, but I remember seeing like a ghost and
Hmm.
the reflection in that window.
The
Like,
heck? Do you kind of remember like what it looked
yeah,
like?
yeah, I just remember it like I remember it like being a person,
Hmm.
but I remember like um I could just feel like the evilness in it.
Hmm.
And then that's when I was just like started screaming, and then I was like, I quit looking at that window, and I remember I kept I went to the door and I started pounding on the door
Hmm.
because I don't know why the doorknob was so high, but anyways, I remember I couldn't open it.
Hmm.
But I remember like mom and them came in there and I told them what I saw, at the window or whatever.
Hmm.
After that, they like put a curtain up, and I don't know. It's just that's why I think now I'm so traumatized with like looking at reflections,
Hmm.
like in windows and stuff,
Yeah.
or like even when I get off work, I'll have to like put my mirror up and don't want to look in a mirror and stuff like that.
Even with the mirror?
Yeah, just like even at home, like I was always traumatized.
Well, do you remember when mom was in treatment at the Jackson Recovery Institute and we were there with her in the treatment, and then they gave us like our own separate like bedroom.
Hmm.
And when we were in there, they gave us like a bunch of dolls and toys. And remember, we got
Yeah,
that doll.
Yeah, because I remember someone donated like a bunch of toys, the treatment or whatever,
Yeah.
and then I remember I went in there, or we went in there and we got a whole bunch of toys and stuff, and I remember I had this Pooh Bear, and then mom said that she felt freaked out about it, and I don't know why.
Yeah.
She was like, "Oh, that thing looks creepy or whatever," and I was like, "No, it doesn't." And I remember I wanted to lay by it or whatever, and I just kept telling mom, "Oh, I'm gonna keep it in the room." Mom was like, "Why don't keep it in my room?" Because I remember we had our own separate room,
Yeah.
and then but anyways, I remember like I wanted to go lay with mom. I don't even know how it got in there in the room that we were laying with mom,
Hmm.
but I remember it was in there, and then I remember it went off when we were all asleep, and I think it was like making all kinds of noise, and then mom was like, "Shut that thing off! What is it doing here? I told you don't bring it in here." I said I didn't,
Hmm.
but anyways, that thing kept making a bunch of noise. Just take the batteries out of it,
Yeah.
and then
I remember that.
I remember we looked at the back of it, and then that thing didn't have no batteries in it.
Hmm.
So we was like, how the heck was it playing? And we all got like freaked out. And then that thing
Yeah.
was like, change my batteries or something. And I was like, what the fuck? And then mom was like, oh, throw that thing out, like take it back in there. So that's when we took that doll and we got, put it back in the toys or whatever. And
Didn't one of her friends from the treatment
yeah,
place come in there and come grab it?
yeah.
Like that was traumatizing.
But we didn't tell them because we didn't want them to get freaked out either.
Mm-mm.
But that was like one of the scary things that that scared us. And pretty sure scared mom too because mom was so freaked out about it as it is.
Hmm. I can't even imagine like some of the stuff that mom probably experienced or witnessed in her life, especially
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to a lot of paranormal. Could it?
There's probably like a bunch of stories that she didn't tell us.
Because honestly, whatever it was probably following mom, and
Yeah.
we just happened to be there.
And then yeah, like what if the spirit was following her, some kind of spirit following her and just
Mm-hmm.
kind of like, you know,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just like her and her active addiction,
hmm
so wherever she went, it went to. I don't know. That's my little theory there.
yeah, that's what I believe too.
But those are the only stories that I have. Do you have any more?
Not that I can think of right now.
Maybe we could do a part two.
Yeah, but do part two. I mean,
Start start making them up.
no, I have another story too, but we could save it for part two. But it wasn't like with
Just share it.
like mom and him or anybody, but um we could put it on part two
All right. Well,
because this one's a little bit longer and a bit kind of like scary. Has involves dear lady.
okay. Yeah, we'll save it.
Okay.
So I made a post on social media and I asked if anybody would like to share their personal stories of what they encountered. So my aunt, Lisa Bugs, messaged and she gave me her story. So here it goes. So when I was a teenager, we went to a party west of Macy. But I was trying to get back to Macy and nobody had a ride. I had went outside and seen two people walking down the driveway. So I asked them to hold on and asked if I could walk with them. When I go inside to get my coat, I look and they're walking down the long driveway and you got to go up the hill. It's a white rock all the way up the hill, but there's no outside lights, so it's pretty dark. But the next house over has outside lights. So when I'm walking, I'm thinking they were walking pretty fast, and I asked them to hold up and wait for me. And I'm trying to catch up to them, and they got on the main road where the white rock is, and I stopped because now I can see them in the light. But I'm thinking, who am I following? Who are these people? And as I look, they're not walking, they're floating up the road. And I turned around and booked it all the way back up to the house. And I run in the door, and everyone was asking me where I've been. And I told them I was trying to follow these people back to Macy. And they said nobody left and everybody was still there. They said that they've been looking for me for a while and they were trying to, and I told them I was trying to catch up to them people and follow them back. But they made it seem like they were looking for me for a long time. So I must have been gone for a long time, but it didn't seem like it. So she also shared, but we used to stand outside of our house, which was 3 houses up from that spooky house out west, and we would listen to little kids playing on the road. Mind you, it's pitch dark down there, but just laughing, and you could hear the rocks from the road. They run up and down, but this is like after midnight. I want to take a moment to express my gratitude to my sister Megan for sharing her ghost encounters and paranormal stories, and to my aunt Lisa Buggs for sending in her experiences as well. Your contribution truly mean a lot. As I continue creating each episode of this podcast, I'm learning and growing every step of the way and getting a little better each time. Thank you to everyone who have subscribed to my channel and shared my posts. I'm especially grateful to those who have reached out personally to say the podcast is helping them heal and encouraging me to keep going. That support means more than I can put into words. That's all for now. See you in episode 5. Have a blessed day.